And we are up, and welcome to the Beacon Road Show. I'm your host, Rich Levesque, and with us this lovely day is all the way from New Zealand. I just love how the internet works.
Mm-hmm.
We have Ana Ferrari, who's a mindfulness coach, and we're going to get into some of what she does and her story in a little bit, but let me remind you that you're doing the best you can today with what you have to work with, whether it feels like it or not. You are enough, and you matter. Please take extra special care of yourself today and every day. On the Beacon Road Show, everything is intended to come back to this message, to wrap up around this message. Because ultimately, we are all doing our best to be our best and to be seen and heard, both by ourselves and by the world around us. The goal for this show is to honor that by speaking of how that works for us and how it can look. We'll share stories of how we're navigating that journey, and we'll also talk about skills and tools that are available to help us along in our own journeys. And that's the thing. There's no one way for anything. We each have to find what works for each of us in our own ways and on our own terms. Like all things, treat this like a buffet table. Remember those? Take what clicks, leave the rest. However you come about finding this little corner and whatever way you use it, it's an honor that you're taking the time to visit today. And how are we doing today, Ana?
Hi, Rich. Thank you so much. It's really, for me, it's an honor to be here. And I was just listening to what you were saying, and I didn't have the time this week because I'm a mom and I have a small business to listen to your show. I wanted to, and I actually click on it because I wanted to know more. And this is so perfect because, I love your introduction. It's really nice.
Thank you very much. And that's the beauty of how this is all playing out on, internet. Like we're doing the live stream on Facebook, but ultimately it's about being up on the podcast. And, the goal of this in the end is to have it out there because,
exactly.
Ultimately it's not about, it would be nice to have, 50 million hits or whatever the cool kids get. But what it comes down to in the end is finding the right voice. And, I kind of do my thing and I tell my stories and I have my stuff and my voice clicks for some people, but there's a lot of people that it won't click for. That's not a bad thing. It's kind of how we are. We're all individual and that's how it's supposed to happen.
Yes.
And that's why I love the idea of having different guests with different stories and different ways of going through things because somebody else's voice might hit. So maybe it doesn't happen today or this week. Maybe somebody's bouncing around on their Apple podcast and it pops up in 6 months.
You can see videos on YouTube from 10 years
Exactly.
20 almost. I actually came with a very interesting tool. I don't remember the name from this lady. She was a psychologist and she developed this really interesting tool. And that's all she did. I couldn't even find her on Facebook. Her webpage is really outdated. So that's all she did. But for me, that was like, such a find. Yeah. So maybe we are this for someone somewhere, we say something that it triggers. And absolutely.
And it's crazy, these rabbit holes that we can go down when we just sit on oh my goodness. There's so many parts of my life and my experience that I wouldn't have had or even have known about if I hadn't just been bored on YouTube on a Saturday night, literally.
Yeah, but there is also a special focus that your attention takes because I was looking for that. I was looking for, I was Googling stuff like, how to feel better about myself or how do I experience peace or what about meditation? What about Qigong? So I think sometimes it drops in our laps, but there is some sort of, I think there's a pull together from people and content. So someone that is in this message, because the message that I like about your introduction is you are enough as you are. The rabbit hole is telling you you have to fix this, you have to do this better, you have to, so my rabbit hole started with I'm not the person I'm supposed to be. And then I started going into these things, and then eventually I come back to I am enough as I am at all times, which is what your show is about.
And my injury, it's kind of started from a fairly similar spot. For me, it was, I always knew, I spun a little bit differently than the world around me, and was trying to figure out what exactly that was. And, of course, you kind of learn to just, bottle it up because, ultimately, it was something I kind of tripped on the other day. If you're not really being seen and you're not being understood, then you're going to back up and you're going to go back into survival. And I think that's what a lot of us do.
Isn't that a perfect mechanism? Because what else would it be? How else would it could have been done at that time in our lives with, the environment and all of that? It's perfect. And it in a way, it's like it plants the seed, and when you say that, I was just thinking, well, that's how I have the impression that all of us feel. All of us feel that sense of me being, the odd one out, the strange, in different ways, but I think we all feel that. And that's, the first thing that came to my mind is like, well, that's achieving some sort of specialness, isn't it, for the child, to themselves. But eventually, it just does this job of giving us some sort of protection, just extra layers to survive, that survival mechanism that you mentioned. And then when you start growing up and mature, things seem to get worse and worse and worse. And then kind of middle age, young 30s something, 40s, it starts to clear up that actually, I'm good enough. And people have been telling me for years. I had friends who told me for years to my face. I have the Louise Hay book since I was 15 years old. So I couldn't hear it. So when, so I think there's some sort of natural process to go through to get to the other side. And for me, the process was going from self-hate, absolutely self-hate, self-abandonment, to coming out of the other side, so to speak, into loving the person that I am. And it's like, no matter what, that's the hardest part. Easy to love
Absolutely.
the good, but then no matter what is the part that is I'm always working on, because this is a sneaky thing that comes at any time, consciously or unconsciously, be telling me you shouldn't be this way. You need to be this other way. What you're doing is not enough. You should look like this. You should look like that. All of that can come back at any stage. And all people around me will trigger that also. So keep loving no matter what. It's a practice, a lifelong practice. It's a big commitment. And it feels really good most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Now, I've experienced, and this is something that I've learned in the experience, is, self-loving, it's not a noun, it's a verb. And it's something that you don't hit a point where, okay, I've got this all down. It starts, I mean, maybe you do when you're like a little, when you're a when you're a baby, you don't know any better. And what happens from there is it doesn't matter what kind. Upbringings do matter to a degree. If you've had a terrible upbringing, it's going to make it worse. But even those who grew up with the most present and the best, there's messages out there that you're going to pick up, and there's a lot of times there's no intent other than to get you to buy things or to get you to listen and to fall in line. Schooling, like, that's part of the process of raising an adult. There's no way but to have some of that.
Exactly.
It has to.
Exactly. It has to happen. And it comes like, for example, our parents, when they condition us, they're coming from love, because sometimes someone would say to someone, don't be so loud, because they believe others don't like loud people. And if my child is loud, he won't be loved or accepted. He won't fit in. So we're basically telling people how to mold themselves to fit in through conditioning, that it comes from our parents, they come from their parents, but we are evolving. And I think there's a big jump. And that's why for me it's so important to keep myself young when I'm raising my daughter, and realize that the world that she's going to live on is very different. I don't know that world. So I can see what she's growing around and figure it out that this is it for her. And, I have like you say, it's an ongoing process of being present with what is driving you, so to speak. And absolutely. And it has to happen. Conditioning from families, and then marketing and peer pressure and all of that.
Education, of course, too. I mean, again, I'm not trying to rip this, I could, but, the people that teach, they do the best they can with what they know how, but part of the system is to form people to, mold in a certain way. Whether you agree with that or not, that's yours that's yours.
Sorry to cut you off. I don't think there's an evil intent. I don't think there is such a thing as someone is, people want to make money. I want to sell my t-shirts. You want to sell your t-shirts. It's part of the message. Or some people, it's just like, we don't have it. Our message is money. We want to sell laundry powder and, in 20 different packages to cut in people's, buttons. It's like, fishnet for people funny. That's okay. But so that's a big
for a lot of us, it's a, profit and, financial success is a tangible validation. And we learn that, that's how we, in a lot of ways, we're still, judged on results. That's.
Yes. But honestly, the more that I come to have the groundness that meditation gives me, because meditating kind of like grounds me in the present a lot, more and more. And even when sometimes I stop practicing for a week, and that's my opportunity, because something in me will be like, you haven't done it for a week. What kind of mindfulness coach are you? You haven't meditated for a week. So my job in that moment is to listen to that and to be okay with me not meditating for a week, and to love that voice. Because that's why I stopped meditating for a week. So I had that opportunity. So meditation is not an addiction. Meditation is just something I do because I enjoy it. And sometimes I just stop. So that's one of the things, when meditation brings me to the present, and I can see that kind of like vertical cut that is my life, not the being born, going to die, more like this moment, then everything is a success. $10 in my account is a success. $0 in my account. 10 million. I don't have that experience, but everything is a success.
And it comes down to like in that present, we'll kind of start, we're going there with, all right, yeah, you might have, $7 in your account, but okay, if I have, I've got what I need to get through today, then I'm okay. Tomorrow we'll take, we can deal with tomorrow, and we'll do what we need to do tomorrow. But also too, and this kind of goes to a lot of, our fears, because when we see that, that low, what's going to happen in 2 weeks when the rent is due? What's going to happen when, and, it's, most people get caught up in that. I think that, that I'm not going to.
It's pretty scary. If we think about it, if I've been in that position, I haven't been in that position with rent, but I've been in that position with other stuff. And I've been in that position in my head, even though I had lots. So it is pretty scary. That's the part that I like to, when we do the mindfulness coaching, I like to honor that scary feeling. Because for the person, it feels as real as it gets. The same way it feels for me, so it's not about, it's about just addressing that fear and being with it. And slowly it disappears in my experience, to the point that you get to see those, it's like one and the other, one goes with the other. You become more present. You do have those moments where you shift your attention to the imaginary future, because it's true that your rent is going to be due in a way that it has happened in the past. But 2 weeks is a long time. Well, technically it's not, but so what happens is you can bring yourself to the present and just have that ease. And in that ease is that miracles start happening. I don't know what that be. I don't know how that looks. It could be a new job opportunity. It could be it could be a check that you didn't expect it. It may be even hard to imagine what could be that could fall in your lap, that it can mean everything, it's okay. So that's why we close ourselves to possibilities when that fear kicks in and it feels so real. That's where nothing can come in. So learning to be with that feeling and kind of like just honor it first, because it's not like you're not supposed to feel anything that you feel. You're feeling it. That's the part that I forget many times a day, and that I'm trying to remember. And this conversation is really good for me, because it's kind of like a reminder to just be with those feelings. But I don't know how we went into the rent. Yeah, the fear, those being in the present. What being in the present for me is, and what isn't. Being in the present is not trying to control any outcomes, or if I'm in the present because I want something from being present, that's also like a thing that I have to learn to be with, get familiar, and just each time I notice, come back to the original point, which is I'm here to be here in this moment.
Absolutely, and I love that. I love that mentality, and it honors, honors all the feelings, because if because most of the time when we deal with those anxious, scary moments, when we go into that, fight or flight, the amygdala kind of takes over and kind of hijacks, all of the logic up front, and you're literally, your mind is creating a bear that you're fighting with.
Exactly.
So those mechanisms are still there. We haven't evolved out of them yet. So, that amygdala is looking for bears to fight, and like, oh crap, the rent. All right, there we go. There's your bear. Let's go. And what ends up is, everything's kind of,
Everything gets
bottled up
distorted.
and fight. Yeah, you're fighting. You're spending your energy fighting
Suddenly,
with that.
suddenly it's life or death, because that's what the fear is. The fear is I won't make it. Or and the other thing, it's interesting what you say about the mind going like that, because it's almost like there is this thing between the physiology of the fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
and the vulnerability that creates for stressful thinking. So that's the part that I'm at. I would like to read a little bit about it, because I think most of the time in some stories, maybe, yeah, in some stories that trigger us about people, what comes down to is a feeling in the body that it comes in, and then I'm kind of vulnerable to my own thinking, to identifying with it, like I did probably when I was a child. And I think the big job of maturing, or becoming a and I think this is timing, and it's the same, it's different for everyone. It's just creating that gap where you can observe your thoughts and know that it's thinking. Because I was walking yesterday here, and I saw this tree, and I went to the school of Byron Katie over 10 years ago, and we did these morning walks where she would, we would walk and we would name things, tree, for what she calls the first generation thought. So, tree, the second generation thought it will be wonderful tree. So that adds emotion to something. So I was walking there and I just saw this tree, and I look at it and I almost look at it like it didn't have a label, like it didn't have a name. And then I thought tree. And then I thought beautiful. And then I realized that when I'm projecting my thinking into the world, I stop seeing the world. I was stopping every thought that came in between after. It was stopping me from actually in direct experience seeing the tree. And for me, this is important because when I'm in the room and I'm in the walk and I practice this direct experience looking, which is like just making eye contact with the things around me. Because most of the time where my eye contact is on my own thoughts. So what's happening is everything is there, but I'm focused up here. And that for me, and this is the sandwich example. It happened to me a few times that I start eating, and because I'm so caught up on my thinking, I finish my sandwich and I don't recall having it eaten. And that's what I don't want for me to happen with life. That's the part that I realize, making that direct contact with the things around me and the people gives me. It gives me that experience versus giving me the experience of me thinking. So I think there comes a point where we can do that separation between us and our thoughts. And yes, when we are triggered, it's been really, really helpful for me to remember I am triggered. Just to simply acknowledge the fact that I'm like thinking really fast, feeling really strong about something. I am triggered. That's my trigger state. And then after that, I can, work with the self-compassion, the self-love, and coming back to the present. So
I want to walk back to that sandwich analogy you made, because I find myself, I'm just going to put it out there right now, I will be stealing that in the future because that's really good.
it's so good, isn't it? I mean, like, man, it's such a good, for me, it's like, yeah. And you know what? I had the experience to see my granddad diagnosed with a really bad cancer in his brain, and he could barely say much, but I saw something because he was like regretting. He was like, how many mistakes I made, how wrong I was. And there was something there that I took as a message to, I won't let that happen to me. I want to get to the end of my life. And if the egoic part was having it done it all right, that would have been the egoic part. But the part that was like, there is something that we figured it out at the end of our lives, that we can figure it out right now and just not get, that feeling of feeling cheated, sort of speak, So yeah, you were saying about the sandwich.
Yeah, and I've noticed that there's so many of those experiences where I'm lost in trying to figure out. It's usually something that ultimately, a future piece of information comes along and you realize it kind of sorts itself out, or it's something that's like so big in the world that it's over my head anyway. And I'll have these these loops kind of go through my head. Like for example, if I'm driving, if I'm on an hour drive, and I can find that my and then all of a sudden I get to where I'm going, and I realize I have no idea how I got here. I completely missed out on anything that was around me. I completely missed out on.
But the good news is that now you can consciously decide how much of the world you're going to get to see and experience. It's just a reminder. It's just, and this is, you say we all do things along the way, alternatives and things and tools and authors and things like that. I had such a long list of things that I try with. I did one thing called deep looking, which is part of the, I forgot about it. There used to be this guided conversation to see through the illusion of self that some people were doing. Liberation Unleashed is the name of the website. So deep looking means that. Deep looking means, can you see what, like right now, can you see the roof? Just, we call it a roof so we can both look up, but you see the actually solidity of it, or apparent solidity, but it's here, it's the present, it's now, it's grounding. And I was walking in Waiheke Beach one day, and I was walking toward at the beach, and I saw there were these massive boulders, rocks, majestic stuff. And it's like, whoa, I think, all the things that are around you right now are there for you to ground you. This is your present. This is your moment, and you will move through life with it. That's how it is. And the other analogy that I always like traveling buses, because when you travel in a bus, and especially not driving, but when you're traveling a bus, I just can relax in a different way because I'm not in charge. I am where I am, but I'm moving at the same time. So that's how for me functions the now, being sitting in the bus, and time, seemingly time, past, future, tomorrow, next minute, is the bus, and some sort of ease that you only need to account for that moment. For your well-being. Your well-being is supported over time for your well-being in the moment. So that's it. So that's the other analogy I found it really useful.
I like that one. And I like it pulls to the people watcher in me. I'm one of those people that I'm not a big crowd person. When I get into like a real crowd like that, then it's just kind of like head on swivel, looking for, all right, look for the danger. That's just, a lot of that's just kind of like, background. But if it's, like say you're kind of, you're on a bus and it's, there's, stuff going on, and you're passing things, and there's people, kind of sitting, in their own worlds, kind of, somebody might be, reading a book, or somebody might be doing a crossword, or somebody might be having a conversation over in the corner. And I just love kind of watching all these dynamics. Yeah. And I love to just kind of watch like the underlying dynamics of what's really going on. But the whole point is, it's a really good place to stay present.
What you describe is life, because we are doing that. Some people are doing crochet. Some people are talking over video camera. Some people are out working. It's different because it's not a contained space like a bus. And when I say a bus, in my experience, wasn't a long trip, like a long distance bus where you can actually, you're not gonna be, and it's different than a plane, because on a plane you just, it's darkness and bzzz, but in the bus you're outside. And so what you describe is basically, in the analogy, it's life. It's just, if each one is traveling, doing what they do in the moment, and yes, it's adding up to their experience over time. And that's the other thing that, what I call my life, it will be the experience over time. But that it's only happening moment to moment, 10-second increment. And one thing that I read that I was thinking the other day, and I told my friend who had this insight, is that the fight or flight. Like, I had an accident 4 weeks ago. Since the accident, my fight or flight has been like up here. Like you say, I walk into a room, hazard, exit, things going wrong, someone knocks a glass and my head is a fight. Really out of proportion. So in the way, and I always had that. I always had that since very little, because my environment. So some of us, for different reasons, we might have been triggered that fight or flight really strongly, one time or repetitive, it doesn't matter. And it could have been something silly, a dog just really and you were little and just came over you. So now that fight or flight has been, when I walk into a crowd, that's going to be touch again. So that's the awareness. So all these 4 weeks, I had to have such a strong practice of remembering that I am my fight or flight is heightened, that it could have, it actually is the first time that I used the word depressed, because that's how I felt. And I never experienced that. But so the fight or flight, and observing the heightened state and what places, and just doing something to soothe that nervous system. It's figuring out what it is that it soothes that nervous system, for me was key, because I went through stages of agoraphobia. I didn't want to leave my house. There weren't long stages, but there were, I couldn't go to a club, which is not a big thing to miss anyway, but
right.
I was in my 20s. I spent like from my 20s to my 30s being safe all the time. No concerts, not crowds, nothing that would, so eventually I had friends that took me out anyway, and eventually started seeing that it was safe, all of that things. But yes, the fight or flight triggers the vulnerability in the stories, and then that's what we experience. So we are not experiencing life, we're experiencing our thinking. So if I am feeling sad, it's because I'm having a sad thought. If I'm feeling scared, it's because I'm having a scary thought. So just, again, creating that gap with your mind where you just observe it, feel the effect, but it's not you. It's not your identity anymore, like when we were kids, probably.
It's, ultimately, if you just kind of sit with it and you kind of accept it for what it is, and you're not trying to either identify with it or going the other way, trying to fight it off because, well, this isn't acceptable to feel this way, quote unquote.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And what happens is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And so what ends, if you just kind of accept it, you just kind of flow with it, then it kind of does what it needs to do, and then it just kind of goes about its merry way, and you kind of go on. It doesn't, take up permanent residence.
No, the resisting is actually how it gets to stay. Because the resisting backup story is, if I don't resist this is going to swallow me. This is going to mean so much bad things if I don't resist this, if I don't push this away. Or I can either make it true and, like you say, identify with it. This is me. Or I can say, this is me. I don't want it. So that's me, someone that is this and it doesn't want it. So there is 2 layers of me. So when you say flowing with it, it's basically saying, I'm having an experience. This experience is already here. This feeling doesn't mean nothing about me. It's just a feeling. It's here. It's probably really old. It's probably been here many, many times, and I've been like shushing it away, like a salesperson that knocks and no, go away. And now it's like, oh, now I'm taking a different approach with you. And that's why I think one of the things I wrote last week is learn to relate to these feelings. Is the point of relating to these feelings is not even to fix yourself. It's not about that. Relating to these feelings is an experience that you're having, and you can handle it in a different way that we all been handling for a long time. So this way is, openness and to listen to the feeling, to just have it. Some people need, someone next to them to do this holding, because it can be overwhelming to just go back to a feeling and just start feeling it. Some people will be a mild discomfort, some people will be like a really intense, scary feeling. So holding space for that is part of what I do. And I am aware of my limitations, and I'm learning. I'm not an expert, but finding that feeling and just learning to relate to it is the core of the mindfulness thing. And what happens in that is each person experiences a new level of resilience to their own feelings, self-resilience, self-reliance, self-assurement. It's like, finally I'm showing up for me. So it's very, very nice. Yeah.
Yes. And when I'm listening to you describing the process and what is coming through to me, and I think is very important to get across, is at no point in any of this process is there any quote unquote fixing of anything. It's not. It's
no.
Everything. Yeah. It's the person's value. In the case of like a client of yours, the value is there and their worth is there. It's always been there, and it's going to continue to be there.
It's so amazing.
It's just honoring what's there and finding peace with the things we don't spend enough time in.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's not fixing anything. It's honoring. I see it as honoring what's already there.
Exactly. And it's been there, and it's going to be there, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing that, you know, sometimes we get to realize seemingly too late. There is no such a thing, but that's always there. We're always it. We're always without thinking to tell me otherwise. You know, if I tell you I'm the perfect weight, something is going to come in, an image of the perfect body, or an image of an outfit that I believe I cannot wear. It's going to come to my mind will do all those things to try to prove me that I'm actually not the perfect way, that I should be this other way, blah, 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 blah. So learn to identify that as a feeling in the body, and saying to that place is like, you're okay, you're enough, and that is the same for everything that can be measured against a standard or against someone else. Because, you know, I'm not the person I'm supposed to be. It's a really broad way to fall short, no matter what you do.
Yeah, because it keeps moving the target, so you can't hit it.
Exactly, but to keep going. Like, I wrote something that is like, it took me so long to figure it out. Some things were the problem disguised as the solution. All that fixing myself was the problem disguised as the solution. There was nothing to fix. Like you say, we are not making anyone better. We just, you know, being at peace with being good enough, worthy, and as I am. And we all can say that. I can say that to a degree, because I still have thinking that will come in. But it doesn't change the fact. That's something that I'm still working on myself.
It makes sense. It seems like that's going to be a constant. It's always going to be, there's going to be, moments and experiences that will challenge that. And it's going to be a process to continually remind yourself. It's not, and it's, ultimately, that's part of the whole point of, this whole life thing being a journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's no destination. We all have the same beginning, we all have the same end, and everything else is just the ride.
Well, the quality of your life is the quality of this moment. Are you like, because then when you come out of the survival and you realize that the past doesn't exist anymore, other than as those twitchy feelings in the body that can be loved, they can be whole, they don't, you relate to them. So then from my experience is that you come to this kind of 0 point, which is like, the past doesn't exist anymore. Moving forward, I can give whoever I want to be. And that I is whoever life wants to be. Because it's like life is leaving you. And you can pick and choose, because you have a free will. You have a preference. You have a taste. Some people like race cars. Other likes Lego. It's, and it's like, and what do I base my doing? I base it in the level of joy that it gives me, versus I base it into recognition, approval, appreciation, which is absolutely fine. I do a lot of things for approval. I do things for appreciation. It used to be my religion. Mm-hmm. Then slowly, and Byron Katie has a lovely saying, says about love, approval, seeking love, approval, and appreciation. So that's very interesting to notice also. Where am I seeking love, approval, and appreciation? Okay, I am doing it. That's the end of the line. There's no need. Why do I do it? I shouldn't do it. Oh, that's happening. That's present for me. So just being with that. It's yeah, it's a moment to moment practice of, like, there is this idea that I had for a book. It may happen or no, but I had this feeling, because this is the other thing. I started having these feelings, and one of the feelings is that we are here learning to live as love. And the love can only live through us when we apply it to ourselves, by figuring it out that we're whole, we're worthy, we're enough. We have these tensions. That's enough too. That's good too. That's worthy too. And then you kind of like fill your cup, and then you can be an expression of love, be that tool for love, that sense that, you could be meeting people that you live in that way will trigger them. That's a good thing. So there could be people that want, so everything will ripple from that sense of self-love and kind of deeper identity, sort of.
Exactly. You're a tool for somebody else to, maybe they need something mirrored back, then they get to choose from there if they choose to sit with that and work through that experience, or they may not. They may decide they're going to fight with it and go about with their existence, and that's perfectly their right to do so.
Yes. And that's the other thing. Someone said to me, I say to them, I didn't believe in chakras, and I still don't know much, but I had this experience, and I feel that my heart chakra just opened. And, oh, okay. So he says something to me, it's like, well, some people are going to tell you that that's bullshit. And what are you going to do with that? And I just say, I will just love them. It's like, oh, that's it. Yes, you just love them. Because what's not to love? They're having their own experience. It's not personal to me if they say, something about me or what I believe on. And that's something that I started, I have a daughter, and sometimes I see behavior in the kids that I can see that is the misunderstanding platform for everything else. One time, there were these two girls, and they were playing, and my daughter walked by, and I say, honey, you look beautiful. And the other girl turned around and she said, you are saying I'm not. So I gave one girl a compliment without even thinking about anything else. And the other girl thought process was that I was telling her she wasn't. It's up to this day, there was a time where someone else would get complimented in front of me, and I will feel this, this feeling that something was taken away from me. But then eventually you get to see that there's just a feeling. And I think some of the things that we go through as adults are from those, because the mind of the child, as I've seen it, is always measuring who's first, who's going to win, who has more, who has less, who's popular, who's unpopular, how to be liked, how not to be liked, whose opinions matter. My daughter had a jacket for her school picture, and some people say she looked better without it, and she took it off, and then she said to me, well, I actually think I look better with it, but I did take it off. It's like, well, now you know how to listen. Like, oh, okay. So slowly getting that, it's almost like we adults regress. And that's something that the mindfulness also addresses, because when we go into the trigger, what we're doing is we're going back to a younger self. And that's why you see grown-ups acting like children. Myself,
Trying to fill that need that they didn't get met.
Exactly.
And that's really, in the end, we're all, even if it's aggravating and frustrating and you want to like lose your mind, we're all just trying to be heard in the end.
By ourselves.
Exactly.
We want to be heard by our own selves. There is part of us that we have left behind. We have been either left behind, medicated, pretend they are not there, denial. It's called denial for a reason, it's denial. Yep. So all of that is our is where love is needed the most and is being seen the least. So, learning to love all that part of you that you think is whatever you've been telling yourself it is, it's good news, because that means you can love yourself whole, all of it, and you're putting no conditions to the love for yourself.
Amen to that.
It's not even about hitting the target of the perfect unconditional love. I love that I'm not unconditionally loving to me sometimes. When I am not unconditionally loving, I love that. Because if I didn't, I will be conditional. It's a bit of a, but yeah. So when you learn to live unconditionally to you, you learn to live unconditionally to others, and that always leads to more openness and more sort of connection. And the people that used to react one way to you, they will react to others in other ways. And no matter what, it always leads to the better. The person that gets triggered, the person that gets inspired, it always leads to something better. It may suck for the person that gets triggered for a while, but that's what they need to do. If that's
what that suck is what they need for their growth.
Exactly.
All right, Let me get the clock. Yeah, we're gonna wind this down, but I'm gonna throw a few lighter questions at you. It's very similar to Lewis Howes and James Lipton. Apologies to both of them, but I'm going to ask you a few questions. Just first answer that comes to mind, go with it.
Oh, I don't know what I'm going to say. That's scary. Okay.
Exactly. All right. If you could go back in time and experience one event in person.
One event?
Yes.
Yes. I am experiencing it. It's a 2020 pandemic thing. Yeah. I feel like I'm experiencing a moment in time, like history, Yeah.
Makes sense. What's the one thing that if you go without it, it totally throws everything out of whack?
Exercise and meditation over time. I can take breaks. I can be lazy or indulgent, but over time, meditation and exercise and friends.
Is there a either fast food place or a beverage shop, one of those places that has the drive-through? Is there one you go by that's still tough for you to pass up? It's just kind of like,
no, I kind of quit fast food a long time ago, but I have it as a guilty pleasure.
Okay, so when you have the guilty pleasure moment, what's the first one that comes to mind?
McDonald's. Yeah, quarter pounder. Yeah.
Oh, I hear that. Mine is the 10-piece nuggets. Even though I know that they're terrible and I know every way that they're terrible, they also taste so good when they.
Yeah. And they do the job sometimes, because sometimes I'm feeling like not very good and I just have that and it's like sugar, fat, all in one go. It's tasty.
What brings joy?
Being where I am. Yeah.
What brings peace?
The same answer. Being where I am. Yeah.
And what brings hope?
Hope is Yeah, I think hope is what brings hope is people learning to live from their hearts and waking up to what love means for each one of them. And yeah, that transformation brings hope, because transformation doesn't need time. And hope kind of sets the idea that we'll be better, but we already are better. We just need to transform our view. That's the spot.
Last question. What is the one thing you want people to think of first when they see you, they think about you when you walk in the room?
That I'm an open person, and that we can talk to each other, relate, and be friends. Yeah, that I'm not there to get them or judge them. Yeah.
Amen. How can somebody get a hold of you if they want to connect with you?
That's a good question, because everything is a bit in the making, but I have an email address. It's info@anaferrari.com. That's my full name. And yeah, I'm still in the process of setting up, because I'm an artist, I'm a mother, I have a business. So I'm trying the process to integrate the art, the mindfulness coaching. So I would say send me an email. Yeah, that would be the best way to contact me.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I'm doing two things. I'm doing one-on-one sessions. And the other thing I'm doing is I am sort of compiling a book with the sessions, the mindfulness sessions that I'll be facilitating for someone that choose to go through that modality with me. So, and the reason is for the same reason that I appreciate you doing this, because in each conversation, there is information that we don't know. It could change someone's life. You know, even a Facebook comment can make a big difference. So that's why I want to write a book. I want to write the stories about relating to your feelings, the same way that you decided to do these conversations. It may find someone and it's out there, and it's just another expression of love at the end. So yeah, I'm working on that.
That is beautiful. Anna, this is great stuff. I'm so glad we were able to connect and get to do this.
Yes, I really appreciate you setting it up and committing the time, the effort, and the willingness to learn and share it, because it's fantastic.
Thank you very much, and thank you to those who are who jumped on the stream, and for those who watch on YouTube or listen on your podcast of choice. You can reach me at my site, and that's going to be beaconroad.net. I also have a Patreon account that I've got set up, patreon.com/beaconroad. And I'm on the usual social media suspects, Facebook and Twitter. I am at beaconroad10. And on the Instagram, I am at beaconroad. And these will all be attached to the notes with the go with the podcaster, go in the description. So feel free to stop by. And thank you very much for spending some time with us in however way you did, because ultimately we have possessions, we have money, we have stuff, but our most valuable commodity is time. We only have a limited amount of that. And for you to spend an hour with us today, it's so much appreciated. So you all take care, be safe, be well, talk soon.